Hello everyone, and you're all very welcome to this evening's Suckler breeding webinar. And I hope you're all keeping very well out there. This is the fifth in a series of spring webinars that have been run by the Teagasc Mayo team this spring. And my name is Alan Nolan, and I'm a dry stock advisor based in the Teagasc office in Ballinrobe. And this evening, we're lucky to have three excellent speakers on our webinar. We have Tommy Cox from Teagasc Ballinrobe talking about Suckler heifer replacement strategy. We then have Professor David Kenny from Teagasc Grange talking about synchronization and fixed time AI. And thirdly, we have John Lynch from Dovea Genetics talking about AI use in suckler herds. I'll also be joined by Vivian Silke, our Regional Manager here in Mayo, and Vivian will help out with the questions for our three speakers after they have finished their presentations. And you, the listeners, can get involved this evening and ask questions tonight by using the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. And we encourage you to send in those questions that you might have. And just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded, so you will have the opportunity to view it back again on the Teagasc Mayo YouTube channel. So to tee up our three speakers, we all know that there's many challenges in suckling, not least the key one for farmers, which is making an economic return. And despite some negativity in recent times, in a county like Mayo, suckler farming remains hugely important. Indeed, on the latest ICBF figures, Mayo is the county with the second highest number of suckler cows in the country after Galway. But for suckling to remain sustainable in the future, farmers need to be producing quality to get a good financial reward for their effort, and they also need to be doing it in an efficient manner. So hopefully our three speakers tonight can give you, the viewers, some important information and useful tips that you can implement on your farm. So without further delay, our first speaker tonight is Tommy Cox, and I'll ask you, Tommy, now to start sharing your screen. And Tommy works as an education officer in our Teagasc office in Ballinrobe. But before that, he worked for 3 years on the Better Farm program, helping beef and suckler farmers around the country. And he also farms at home on the family farm in Ruski and Roscommon. So Tommy will now talk to you on the whole area of breeding and selecting replacement heifers. So it's over to you now, Tommy.
Okay, thanks very much, Alan. You can hear me loud and clear, yeah?
Yeah, that's fine, Tommy, yeah.
Okay, good evening, folks, and a very warm welcome to everyone tuned in here this evening. As Alan says, Tommy Cox is my name, and I'm based in the Teagasc Ballinrobe office. So I suppose most of the farms in the region are in the thick of calving at the moment, or coming to an end. And I suppose, as the saying goes, the farmer's work is never done. He can't rest in his laurels. His focus must swiftly right towards the breeding season. And I suppose a fundamental part of the breeding season is getting replacement heifers integrated into the suckler herd for the year coming. So that's the next 15 minutes or so. We'll be having a quick look at how to best manage the replacement heifers in the coming months to try and successfully get them calving down in spring 2022, which seems like a good distance away, but as time goes, it isn't too far. So look at the importance of the replacement strategy. So rearing replacements is a key component of suckler herd management. An annual 15 to 20% replacement rate is recommended for suckler herds in order to maintain long-term productivity. So for various reasons, you have to get cull cows out of the herd. So you all know the reasons yourself: a cow not going in calf, age can come against cows if there are a number of calvings under their belt at a stage. If a cow gets lame, or a cow isn't actually doing the goods for you, it's time to get her off the farm. So we recommend an annual 15 to 20% replacement rate. So for a 20 cow suckler herd, you'd be recommended to bring in 4 to 5 replacement heifers annually. So to improve your herd from year to year, there should be good replacement policy in place. So the heifers coming into the herd should be of equal, or if not higher, genetic merit than the cows that have gone out of the herd, to try and improve the things. It's all about improving, to look to improve the profitability of farms going forward, what you're trying to produce, and to try and improve the thing. So I suppose the requirements of a good suckler cow, fertility is probably one of the key aspects. So we all strive for a 365 day calving interval. So a calf per cow per year is probably the key thing that every suckler farmer likes to achieve. And it's suppose looking at ICBF data, that actually isn't always happening on farm for various different reasons. A physically sound animal, so an animal that has no lameness or any characteristics that you wouldn't like in a suckler cow. Also, you'd be liking a strong, good pelvis to, I suppose, that generate an idea of the calving ability of the cow. Conformation is another aspect, I suppose, and you need to be mindful there of being able to get the calf out of the cow. And then I suppose looking in the ring to command a nice price, you do need a certain bit of style and a bit of confirmation. So to try and balance both, maybe a strong R plus or a U minus grade heifer generally is the confirmation that you will be looking for. Milk yield, I suppose, a follow on from confirmation. The next thing along with shape is weight pays. So I suppose the biggest impact on the live weight of a calf will be the milk yield off the cow. So you want a cow that's going to be able to do a relatively good job on our calf and a relatively cost effective. So you don't want to be putting too much concentrates input into the calf. Docility is a huge thing that you're looking for in your suckler cow replacement. So the reality is a lot of the suckler farms in the region are a one-man show. So you want to be able to handle that animal as efficiently as possible without putting yourself or any members of your family at risk. 2-year calving, I suppose it's a contentious issue with some farmers. You know, some farmers like to calve maybe at later ages, but I suppose we look at the benefits and surrounding 2-year calving and the management of the heifer in order to be able to achieve that. The replacement value, so heifers 4 or 5 star has been shown, cows 4 or 5 star have been shown annually to be producing the goods in terms of weight gain, calving interval, etc. on Irish farms. So we would be recommending farmers choose heifers with high replacement figures. So I suppose sourcing your replacement heifers, where can you get them? There's obviously 2 places you can get them from. Number one, from within the farm. And if that doesn't suit some farms, maybe smaller farms that's running maybe a terminal, a Charlie type stock bull, it mightn't be the option there for him to, so he'll actually have to go outside the herd and source his replacement heifers. So we'll look, I suppose, first of all, internally within the farm, what are we looking for? So there's, I think the advantages from breeding internally outweighs the advantages of actually going outside and sourcing. But as I said, that's not always feasible for every farm. So the advantage of internally, you know the exact breeding of the cow. So obviously you try and breed from your best cows, breed the best to breed from the best. Select traits which you are looking for. So if you're looking for something in a cow, be it shape, be it milk, you can hold on to them traits within the herd and try and build up that as you go along. So keeping the best, as I said, and then probably one of the huge ones there is reducing the risk of bringing in disease into the farm. If you can keep a closed herd where possible, you'd reduce the risk of bringing in diseases onto the farm. Disadvantages then, if you're starting off with slightly lower cow base, maybe for example, milk, if there isn't a lot of milk currently in your herd, it's a bit of a long burner to try and bring a lot of milk into the herd. So actually going out and purchasing maybe a couple of milky type heifers might be a more feasible option for the farmer. So then the second option is to source from outside the herd. I suppose one big advantage of that is you can, I suppose, get a quick replacement. So if you go out and look for a heifer, if you want to target something, you can go out and get it into the herd and hopefully get the progeny off that animal back into the system a lot more quicker. So I suppose on the flip side of that, you have disadvantages of bringing in heifers from outside the farm. So it's not always easy to know the breeding of the replacement heifer that is coming into the farm. So those just trying to source them in March at farms, especially in current times where we're severely impacted by COVID, it's a lot more difficult and a lot more challenging for the farmer. As I said earlier, it's the higher disease risk of bringing in diseases such as leptospirosis or BVD, which can have a hugely detrimental impact on the herd. Do you know the history of the replacement? So why is the farmer selling her? Is there a reason that he's not keeping her himself? Because generally us as farmers, you know, you'll try and keep on to the best ones and try and breed from them. So just looking from within your own herd, which cows should you breed your replacements from? So obviously fertile cows that calve early and calve every year. So cows that calve within the 3-6-5 day calving interval, but that has a calf every year for you. That produces a quality calf, one that you get paid for in the ring, you know, a good shapy type calf that commands a lot of suitable customers. Calves unassisted, that has no major problems calving, that there's no difficult calvings or that you hadn't get to section to get the calf out of. It maintains condition, so there's a huge cost associated with feeding a suckler cow that we all know, especially in the west of Ireland where winters tend to be long. So a cow that's easily maintained, not an overly robust type of cow that takes a higher level of maintenance and higher costs associated with that. Temperament, as we alluded to earlier on, one-man shows and a lot of operations. So to try and get the calf up and sucking can be a challenge on some farms. So ideally, where possible, quite docile heifers that look at the time are the ones that would be recommended to keep. And I suppose last year then we have an extra tool to equip us in selecting heifers. A lot of farmers in the region would have participated in the BEEP scheme, or what might be commonly known as the weighing scheme, where suckler cows and their progeny were weighed on the one day. And that scheme has opened again for farmers this year. So it's something to be mindful of in the coming weeks to get your application in. So that data, what we would be recommending here is for farmers to retain heifers from their top performing cows here. So you can see there, this cow here that produced an average daily gain of 1.33 kilos of average daily gain right up and clean. And so that tells you a few things about the cow. Probably number one, that tells you that she's a good milky type of cow. And number two, when she's sufficient weight there, it tells you that calf was born early within the calving season. So it gives an indication that that cow is a relatively fertile cow. So then sourcing from outside the herd, as I alluded to earlier on, it's not always feasible for farms with maybe one terminal type stock bull to keep their own replacements. So they actually have to go out and source from outside the herd. So if you can ideally set up a trading agreement with a farmer that you know has a good track record of producing good replacement heifers, is probably the gold standard way of doing it. If there's a farmer in your area that's breeding to look to breed a lot of maternal type stock, if you could build up a relationship with him, it's definitely worth an avenue worth exploring. Then I suppose failing that, if you're going to the mart and looking for these replacements, I suppose visually correct is the first thing that we look at. So it has a good pelvis, that has a good well-formed udder with 4 teats, that the animal seems to be docile and easily managed within the ring. And I know that's not always easily to get an indication of on the day. Has a high replacement value of 4 or 5 stars. So the replacement value is made up of all this, I suppose, data here. I suppose daughter milk, daughter calving interval, carcass weight, carcass conformation, docility. These set of data recorded on the farm, that's what is generated towards the replacement value for the farm, for the stock. So generally, as I said earlier on, stock that with 4 or 5 star has seemed to be performing well going on ICBF data. So if you can get heifers that has 4 or 5 star, they're the ones that would be recommended to be purchasing. Heifers that's genotype. So what genotyping is, that their sire and their dam is verified. So a genomic sample is taken, it's sent away for analysis, and their parentage is determined, and that's a good way, I suppose, of knowing that the animal's sire and the animal's dam is correct. And I suppose for yourself to make informed breeding decisions and to prevent any chance of inbreeding from taking place within the farm. So, and then lastly, and definitely not leastly, is biosecurity practices possibly need to be improved on the farm, as opposed to if you're breeding your own replacements. So you might have to draw up a herd health plan with your vet, which incorporates a vaccine policy to try and prevent any risk or any disease outbreak from occurring within the farm. So as I said, 2-year-old calving, so look at huge benefits to 2-year-old calving. Increases the lifetime output of the cow, so you get a calf extra from the cow within her production cycle. You have faster genetic progress. If you can get the cow into the system, you get her progeny back into the system, so you will make faster genetic progress within the herd. Lowers the proportion of non-productive females within the herd. So you aren't carrying a heifer from a 2-year-old to a 3-year-old without her actually producing nothing on the farm. So you're getting a calf off her at 24 months, something that you have a saleable asset the following end of the year. And they're in, which is a huge one that coming in recently with the environmental changes, you have a reduced carbon footprint. So then the performance target to making 24-month calving work on farm. So ideally a birth rate of 45 kilos. From birth until weaning, you're targeting a weaning weight of in around 300 kilos. And then over the winter period, targeting a growth rate of 0.6 of a kilo of average daily gain. Then at bulling, you're targeting at 15 months of age in or around the plus side of 400 kilos. So anywhere from 400 to 425 kilos. Then housing at the second winter. So you want them performing well on grass from the post-bulling right up through until housing at the second winter. So in around 560, 570, 580 kilos, and then at calving anywhere close to the 600 plus kilos. And then I suppose an overall lifetime average daily gain of 0.7 to 0.75. So they do need to be thriving the whole way along. So this is a hugely important aspect of the making 24-month calving work on farm is your sire selection. Not choosing an overly hard calving bull in year one to get the calf out of your cow and get her set up for the remaining calving season. So easy calving, highly reliable sires should be used. And there is ICBF tools available there that will give you an indication of what bull to suit your heifer best. So what we're looking for when we're looking at your bull, you're looking for a calving value of less than 6.9% if you can get it, and then a high reliability figure. So that's a hugely critical, important figure there, that 6.9, because you want to get the calf out of your heifer, and then that'll set her up for the remaining hopefully years within the herd. So then pre and post calving management. So the heifer
1
generally,
minute, Tommy, there now.
Yeah. So the heifer generally will need preferential treatment. So from mating until calving, once in calf, the heifer, you want to maintain her on good quality grass. Ideally, she should be penned separately pre at housing and offered good quality silage, and pre-calving minners then 6 to 8 weeks before calving. Post-calving management, she should be well managed to ensure the resumption of sexual activity. She should be grouped separately and offered preferential treatment. So she might actually need a bit of concentrates right up until turnout, and then getting them out on fresh spring grass is probably as good as if we can get them out. So then in summary, replacement heifers represent the next generation of cows within the herd, and ideally should be genetically superior to their predecessors. Term management is required to ensure the successful transition into the herd. And the last point is a hugely key one. Heifers are the most fertile groups of animals within the herd and should be bred for an 8-week period, which allows each heifer to be served at least twice. After that, if the heifer doesn't go in calf, you would be recommended to get her on, because you will have difficulties serving her post that in her cows. So look, that's it. Thanks very much, everyone, for your attention. Alan, back to you.
Okay, thanks for that, Tommy. That's a great presentation there, and you have some great information in that. So I'll ask you, Tommy, there to stop sharing, and maybe David, you can start sharing your screen there now. And while David is getting ready, again, a reminder to you, the listeners there, that you can send in your questions there on the Q&A tab there at the bottom of your screen. And we welcome all your questions and keep them coming in, and Vivian will read them out again there at the end. So now we have Professor David Kenny, who is head of the Animal and Bioscience Research Department in Teagasc Grange. And David himself is also a keen suckler farmer on the home farm in Ballinrobe there in Mayo. So David, you can turn on your camera now and start presenting. And David is going to talk about the importance of body condition score at calving, and he'll have some information there on synchronization and fixed time AI. So look, it's over to you, David, now.
Thanks very much, Alan, and thanks to yourself and Vivian and all the team at Teagasc Mayo there for inviting me to speak to my county men and women, would say, this evening, which I always welcome the opportunity to do so. So as Alan said, you know, I'm just going to talk to you, I suppose, the time of year that's in it, you know, come the breeding season will be starting on many farms again in the next 6 or 8 weeks. So it's maybe timely to think about maybe, you know, some of the factors that we need to put in place to have a successful breeding season for the coming year. And I'll have specific emphasis, I suppose, on some of the work we've been doing to try to increase the use of AI, with particular emphasis on the use of timed AI. So just as an overview then, you know, like everything, we need to, I suppose, start with some targets that we hope, you know, that we can achieve, and we need to compare, we'll say, with maybe some of the better operators, we'll say, within the country. The interval from calving to the resumption of normal heat, estrus or heat cycles, you know, this absolutely critical phase, we'll say, for the suckler cow. So again, as I said, this is the length of time really between when the cow calves and which is available for breeding again. And this is really where a lot of suckler cows fall down. And I suppose it adds, we'll say, to the difficulty in achieving our 365-day calving interval. I'll talk very briefly about estrus synchronization, we'll say, or timed AI. Again, I suppose a methodology really will say to make it easier, we'll say, to use AI in suckler herds. Specific emphasis will be placed on a farm trial, large farm trial that we conducted, we'll say, throughout the island of Ireland there a number of years ago. And I'll hopefully, will say, finish up with a couple of take-home messages. So some of the key reproductive targets then would be, first of all, and Tommy mentioned already, a 365-day calving interval. So essentially, the suckler cow, her only job really in life, would say, is to produce a good quality calf every year and rear that calf. And every day she goes beyond a 12-month calving interval, would say she's costing you money. Okay, so again, both from a financial perspective, but also more and more, and we'll hear more about it, would say, in terms of her economic sustainability and greenhouse gas emissions as well, which is going to be more and more important going forward. You know, ideally, we'd like to keep the number of cows that are culled annually as barren. They may well be culled for many, many other reasons, we'll say, but a barren to less than 1 in 20. And then that, you know, more than 95% of our cows would actually calve and wean that calf, then rear the calf to weaning. We'd like to have a compact calving, I suppose, with, you know, 80% of cows calved in the first 6 weeks of the breeding season. And again, you know, while it's I suppose, a ambitious target, you know, a lot of the better operators will say are achieving this. And again, it just from a labour point of view, from a sale of weanlings point of view, it just tightens up everything. Replacement rates should be somewhere in between, you know, 16, 18%. In other words, a cow lasting about 5-6 lactations. Again, as Tommy mentioned, bringing in those heifers there, they're expensive to rear, you know, and we want them to last as long as possible within the herd. Tommy mentioned also, we'll say, a key target, calving at 24 months old, particularly where we're rearing and our own replacement heifers. Again, every day she goes beyond that, every week, every month, she's costing money and she's unproductive. And ideally, that those animals would calve at the start of the breeding season, the start of the calving season, as opposed to the middle or the end, because again, they will take a bit longer to come back and heat again and be bred the following year. So to give them that little bit extra latitude or time, calve them as early as possible and towards the start of the calving season. And again, I think there's a role for strategic use of AI in every suckler herd. And Tommy mentioned it, whether it's breeding your own replacements or indeed, you know, using AI, we'll say, to inseminate heifers, we'll say, with very easy calving bulls. And John would follow, we'll say, to talk about a panel of bulls, we'll say, available for exactly for that purpose. So this schematic just shows, I suppose, the kind of 3 main factors that affect reproductive efficiency, you know, within suckler herds. And again, you know, there's many, many factors, you know, that affect whether a cow goes back in calf and how long a cow lasts within a herd, but they can be whittled down into these 3 areas. And the first one here, age of puberty or age of, I suppose, sexual maturity, when the heifer starts to have normal heat cycles and can be bred. And again, you know, she's unproductive in the herd until that happens. So again, Tommy mentioned already, would say, some of the factors to ensure that heifers are cycling at the start of the breeding season, making them eligible to be bred at 15 months and again to calf down at 2 years of age. And I won't dwell on that. But the next 2 here are equally important in terms of the first one, the postpartum interval, which again is a fancy way of saying the length of time between the cow when she calves and when she starts having normal cycles again. And you're all well aware, we'll say that there's a period of time after the cow calves that she cannot be bred. She's not undergoing normal cycles. The longer that is, you know, the more difficult it is to achieve that 365-day calving interval. And then obviously once she starts cycling then and is eligible to be bred, conception rate, would say, is the next issue. And normally, unlike a dairy cow, conception rate isn't such a big deal, we'll say, with suckler cows. Inherent fertility is quite good with suckler, you know, and better, we'll say, than you know, the typical dairy cow. So this schematic here just, I suppose, outlines, I suppose, the target of 365 days between 2 successive calvings. In other words, if a cow calves down today or this week, this year, you want her calving down again, more or less within a couple of days of this date next year again. And again, every day she goes beyond that, would say she's costing money. So I'm just going to look at 2 scenarios here. First of all, here, a cow that achieved the 365-day calving interval. And if we take, for example, a typical gestation length, we'll say for, you know, a continental type bull of about 288 days. Okay, so that leaves roughly about 77 days or so to allow that between when the cow calves and when she has to become pregnant again, if she's to calf down again the same week or the same day the following year. Okay, and in this cow here, she started cycling again. She was eligible for breeding, you know, within about 2 months after calving. So that means that cow had 2 opportunities to be bred and become pregnant and still calf down again 12 months later. Okay. However, this cow here on the bottom, took an additional 3 weeks or so to have our first heat and our first, I suppose, opportunity to be bred. So straight away, if that cow doesn't go on calf to that breeding, there's only one way that our calf interval is going to go, and that's beyond the target of 365 days. So again, this postpartum interval, or length of time between when the cow calves and when she's eligible to be bred again, starts normal cycles, is absolutely critically important. Factors affecting then the interval from calving to breeding would include the maternal offspring bond. That's the major difference between the suckler cow and the dairy cow. Nutrition pre and postpartum, and again prepartum in terms of its effect, we'll say, or before calving on body condition score is absolutely critical. And the cows that calve in moderate to good condition will typically start cycling again and be eligible for breeding earlier than cows that calve down thin. Generally, heifers are take longer to resume normal cycles after calving compared to more mature cows. Season as well, generally speaking, cows that calve that bit later, we'll say, in the season, typically, come back into heat again a bit quicker. Equally, cows calving in autumn, we'll say, are often slower to come back in heat again compared to those in the spring. And finally, there, the bull effect. There's some evidence to say that once cows are in good condition, if there's a bull running with the cows, whether it be a vasectomized bull, if you're using AI, or an intact bull, if you're using a stock bull, it can bring forward maybe cows on average, but again, only if cows are in good condition. Body condition score is absolutely critical in terms of it's a simple method. You can talk to your advisor, we'll say, and if you're not, I suppose, aware, we'll say, or comfortable with it, where you're essentially putting a score on the fat reserves of the cow. Okay, it's very repeatable once you get some little bit of training in the area, and it's independent of body size. And again, we know from the work, we'll say, conducted by my colleague Michael Diskin at Teagasc Rye, that cows that calve a moderate to good body condition score will generally start cycling, we'll say, or being available for breeding, anything from 3 weeks to a month earlier than a cow that's calving down thin. So then moving on to synchronization and time DI. Again, this can, I suppose, it can lead to two advantages. Firstly, it can be used to advance, I suppose, the cyclicity, we'll say, or the availability to breed cows, okay? And the second, it gives you an opportunity to, I suppose, AI more cows at the same time, okay? And again, as I said already, there's a role for AI, I think, in every herd. And essentially, producing replacement heifers, as Tommy mentioned already, we'll say with one, but equally, the use of easy calving sires on heifers as well. If you, for example, only have one stock bull in the herd. Labour and heat detection are often seen as major obstacles for the use of AI. So from that perspective, we need, if we're to use AI, we need practical, low labour and cost-effective protocols for synchronization for our grass-based herds. It has to work well in anestrus cows. So that means cows that are not cycling at the start of the breeding season. I remember up to 60% of cows will not be cycling at the start of the breeding season, okay? And again, this timed AI, we'll say, concept is gaining a lot of popularity in recent years. So we compared, in a large study there a couple of years ago, we compared 3 different synchronization or timed AI protocols. They were all based on a 7-day progesterone releasing device, or PRID. Many of you will be aware of the PRID or a CEDAR. There was over 2,000 cows, 22,000 cows enrolled across 74 herds in the study. All cows were at least 5 weeks calved, would say, when they were started on the trial. And all cows that were treated were submitted for AI, regardless of whether they showed heat or not. So you had 100% submission rates. Herd owners chose the semen, so there was a vast variety, I suppose, of different sires and bulls used across the cows. And we come back then and scan the cows, we'll say, for pregnancy at 30 days and again at 60 days after they were bred. So this schematic just shows, I suppose, in visual terms, the overall protocol used, we'll say, and results. So essentially, the PRIDs were in place for about 7 days. They were then removed, and 72 hours or 3 days later, all cows were AI'd, regardless of whether they showed heat or not. 10 days after that, then, farmers typically turned in their stock bulls to pick up repeats. At 30 days, we come in and we scanned the cows then for pregnancy. And we found that, on average, notwithstanding the fact that about 60% of the cows weren't cycling at all at the start of the protocol, about 55% of the cows that were treated were pregnant to that time DI, okay? When we come back again, about a month later, we found, we'll say, that the time DI combined with the stock bulls picking up the repeats, that almost 80% of the cows that were bred were pregnant in the first 23 days or the first 3 weeks of the breeding season. So essentially, you're getting a very high, I suppose, pregnancy rate and a much better opportunity for the, I suppose, the average calving interval, will say, to be decreased in the herd. Obviously, like anything, good facilities, will say, are very important when it comes to these type of, will say, measures. And in terms of cost, and again, this is something that you'll all be, I suppose, keen for. You know, the first thing to say is all of these drugs, will say, are veterinary prescription only medicines, so they have to be purchased through your vet. Okay, and you know, often we'll say we need to be conscious of a veterinary call-out fee, will say, for this. But on average, depending on the exact protocol used, the cost of the drugs used were anywhere between about 22 and 30 odd euro. The cost of the first service generally would say somewhere between 25 and 30 euro. But again, remember that in a lot of these herds, guys were submitting maybe 10 up to, in some cases, 30 or 40 cows at the one breeding. So there's the opportunity there to be able to negotiate in terms of semen price and AI costs over and above if you're just AI in one cow at a time, for example. The average range per cow was somewhere between about 45 and 60 odd euro, we'll say. And when we look at, we'll say, I suppose that compared, and that's per breeding. When we look at that compared to the typical cost, we'll say, per cow in breeding, where you're using a stock bull, and you know, assumptions here are, you know, a typical run-of-the-mill stock bull at about maybe 3,000 euros over a 30 cow herd. You know, taking the depreciation cost on the bull, taking the salvage value, and you know, the not insurmountable or insignificant cost of maintaining that bull, which could be up to 1,000 euros a year, we'll say, just to maintain that bull, feed it and everything. You're talking about something in north of 50 euro per calf, we'll say, per cow bred. You know, so again, the synchronization and AI costs, you know, look reasonably favorable to that, and you'd expect on average much better quality calves. In terms of protocols for beef heifers, we can also use some of those progesterone-based, I suppose, protocols that I mentioned for the cows, variants of that. But, you know, where, as Tommy mentioned earlier, the heifers are well grown, they're cycling at the start of the breeding season, the prostaglandin-based protocols are the most cost-effective. You know, they're only a fraction of some of the costs that I mentioned there in the earlier slide. And there are different options available depending on, you know, the availability, I suppose, of labor, we'll say, and time for heat detection. The first one here would be a simple protocol, literally, where you'd wait about 5 days for the group. You'd inject all the heifers with prostaglandin, and then heat detect, we'll say, any AI dose, you know, over the next week or so, we'll say, as they come on heat. And generally, most of them would have shown heat by about 5 days after the injection. If you want to tighten them up a little bit more, and maybe you haven't the same amount of time available for heat detection, you can give 2 injections to the group about 10 to 11 days apart, and then heat detect after that. Here you'd expect about 80%, if all the heifers are already undergoing normal heat cycles, about 80% of the heifers will say they're injected, given the 2 injections should show heat to the second injection, you know, and they should all more or less have shown heat by about 3 days after the second injection. So again, allowing you to tighten up there and reduce your time spent on heat detection and AI. So then just to wrap up there, if you can. Just to wrap up then, in terms of the take-home messages, overall, I suppose we'll say in terms of preparation for the breeding season. Firstly, and again to reiterate some of Tommy's points, have your heifers well grown at 12 to 30 months of age, so that they're, you know, undergoing normal cycles at 50 months of age and eligible to be bred, you know, to calf down at 2 years of age. Early nutritional intervention is better than late. So essentially make sure they're growing well, you know, and they'll come off the cow, we'll say, you know, at a decent weight. Going in, if the heifers are light, going in afterwards, we'll say there we found, you know, over the winter, feeding them extra, we'll say, doesn't really bring them forward in terms of starting to cycle. Restrict the breeding season to about 6 weeks in heifers and use easy calving bulls and aim for a body condition score of about 3 at calving, so moderate condition. Cows, really important to monitor the body condition score of the cows during the last third or trimester of gestation and feed them accordingly, particularly those thinner cows. And I didn't mention it, but restricted suckling in those herds, they can do it very early calving or indeed autumn calving, where maybe calves can be locked out during the day after they're about a month of age, we'll say, for a short period, can bring forward, we'll say, cyclicity in cows. Avoid fluctuations in feed supply during the breeding season. Again, try to maintain good grassland management and plenty of grass ahead of your cows. Heat detection, absolutely critical if you're using AI. And for those of you, the vast majority of calves, will say, are bred from stock bulls, be extremely vigilant, particularly with young bulls, in terms of fertility. And then in terms of estrus synchronization and timed AI, acceptable pregnancy rates, I think I've shown that can be achieved with timed AI. Really targeted maybe for your to breed replacements from your better cows, and also maybe to tighten up those late calvers. It can be combined where you already have a stock bull in the herd, would say, with natural service, and quite works very, very well. Possibility is also there to resynchronize, I suppose, repeats. There's also protocols for sex semen, which hopefully will become much more available in the years to come now that we have a sexing semen lab in Ireland. And look at, like everything we talk about, ultimately all of this works very well under good management conditions, but it's not a substitute for poor reproductive management. So again, good husbandry, good technical skills are always critical to the I suppose, the efficacy of any of these interventions. So with that, I thank you for your attention and welcome any questions you might have at the end of the session. Thank you.
Thanks, David, for that, and brilliant presentation there again, and plenty to get our viewers thinking about there. So I'll get you, David, there to stop sharing and get John to start sharing your screen there straight away. And again, remember, you can send in your questions there for David or any of our speakers there in the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen there. It's not the raise hand tab, it's the Q&A tab, and we'll deal with them then in a few minutes. So now we have John Lynch from Dovea Genetics, who is well known in breeding circles. John is a breeding advisor with Dovea Genetics and also farms on the home farm there in Limerick. So John is going to talk about where he sees AI fitting in on Suckler farms at present, and we'll give a quick rundown on some of their AI bulls that they currently have available. So I know we're getting tight on time, John, but I'll hand it straight over to you and get
Okay, Alan, I suppose the first thing is to thank you and Teagasc Mayo for inviting us here tonight to speak. Just one thing before I start, I suppose it's heartwarming for someone that loves suckler cattle and loves the west of Ireland to see eventually suckler farmers are getting paid for quality stock. And I think that's basically what I'm going to cover tonight. We're an AI centre in Thurles. We've about 130 bulls in the stud. Look, that's our business. It's AI technician, semen sales. We deliver liquid nitrogen. We also provide AI training. Why use AI? I suppose selective breeding. There's a huge availability of superior sires. The boy spoke about easy calving. A lot of these bulls are progeny tested. Accurate breeding and calving records. I suppose when I show you some of the calving records in the bulls, the likes of EBY, it's super to see. Increased safety, I suppose, no stock bull around the farm. I suppose some of you know me from the pedigree circles, but definitely you have great control of your whole breeding program by the use of AI. And the epiphany of it is better progeny. And I suppose that can be achieved by selective breeding. It all incorporates into each other. I suppose adaptability, and this is the one I really press about. Whether you're finishing your own cattle, selling stores, selling weanlings, you want to breed your best 5 cows in the herd to breed replacements from. If you're a pedigree breeder selling bulls, AI will juggle to suit your females. I mean, if you want to produce blue weanlings this year and the heat goes out of that market and you want to go back Charlie, if you have a good cow and she's adaptable, you can do all these things with AI. Whereas if you invest heavily in a stock bull, you're kind of married to him and you have to stick with him. Okay, I suppose AI is very valuable to breed replacements. I'm going to go through a few proven bulls later. I suppose we all recognize that we do need to improve milking fertility. We don't need to go too far back the way, but yeah, everyone wants enough milk in a cow to rear a good calf. And I think calving ability is something that's maybe been forgotten about. That is huge as well. Tommy touched on it. AI sires can be chosen for maternal attributes, milkiness, calving length, calving ease, gestation, fertility, all those things. And I suppose my advice and Dovea's advice would be use proven maternal sires in the herd's best females. I suppose I've said that already and I will go back to that. And it's why? Because you get to keep a closed herd, which is very important. We all know about diseases that can come in, down as far as scours, which are huge in the suckler herd. And I think it's massive benefit to breed your own replacements. However small you are, even to use a bit of AI to breed these replacements would be a huge benefit to your herd long term. Okay, myostatin, I'm just going to touch on it. I suppose, personally, I feel it's a huge plus that came from the BDGP, one of the biggest things that's out there, or the biggest opportunities in suckling. Once a female or a male is genotyped, you can test them for myostatin for around €6 with Weatherby's, okay? And what it is a breeding tool. It's a muscle variant that influences carcass traits, okay? So what you have in layman's terms is you have a Q variant, an NT, and an F. The Q variant is also known as the Charlie gene. What it brings is heavier bone, more muscling, better weight gain, and probably a little bit harder calving. The NT gene is the Belgian blue gene. You'll see all blue bulls carry 2 copies. You can see some Limousin bulls with an NT gene and also some Angus bulls. So I suppose if you've ever heard of, oh, I used an Angus bull and Suckler heifers and I wound up with a cesarean, this is where it's coming from. The F gene is the most common, and that can be seen in any easy calving Limousin bull. Majority, I'm talking about 95%, will carry a double F gene, double F94L gene. It's an extra tool for the selection process. And I think if you have your females tested for myostatin, you can make an informed decision, informed breeding decision, and you will not get caught with this freaky calf, okay? And I suppose the typical example is your Belgian Blue Cross Friesian that would be common in some Suckler herds, and you use a Limousin bull in her 3 years in a row. Twice you get away, you get the cow calved. The third year you get this whopper, you wind up with a cesarean. Why did that happen? Even that she shows no muscle, she's still carrying an NT gene because the blue bulls carry a double copy and a Blue Cross Friesian is carrying a single copy. So that is why you will get this big hulk of a limb blue calf or a Charlie blue calf, even though you might be after getting her calf twice naturally. Okay, I'm going to go into terminal bulls. I think there's a huge swing back. We can see it towards these better terminal type bulls. People are back wanting to produce that better weanling. There's more of a hunger there for it. Yes, people still want easy calving, but they are more concentrated on quality, thankfully. I suppose Loki is a unique Charlie bull, really, because he carries 2 copies of this F94L myostatin gene, and that is translating to his calving. He's 5.7% calving difficulty in beef cows. When I talk about an easy calving Charlie, I am talking about Suckler cows. I'm not talking about heifers, okay? He's a good replacement, a good terminal index of 167 euros. Very, very good on carcass weight. Very good on carcass weight for confirmation. But where the bull is winning is small calf at birth, getting into this lovely, muscly, stylish, hairy weanling, ideal for selling at 370, 380, 400 kilos. Doing a super job, not giving any hassle calving, no problem using them on the better type cows, okay? The next bull is Bud Arfus. First calves on the ground with the last 3 weeks. He's a 52 bull himself, CF 52. He's 155 euros terminal index. Currently, he's 8.5% calving difficulty in beef cows at about 75% reliability. He's going to wind up stronger than that on calving. The first calves are super. Personally, what I've seen on the ground and what some of our reps around the country have seen, he's a replacement for Cross Malina Euro. I suppose Euro was bred in Mayo. He's a bull that was hugely successful for Dovea. He was around 13% calving difficulty in the old figures. Don't think this boy will be just as strong as that. Where he'll replace Euro is the calves are just as good. Extreme length, serious tops in them, great square ends in them, and they look like calves that are going to go on and go into serious Charlie cattle. I'd be saying use them on mature cows at the minute. Next bull is Anne the Beaufox, 4438. 2 copies of the NT821 gene. We had another bull, BB2247, Grand Jew. This is a good replacement. He's 8% calving difficulty on beef cows, which is average. They're lovely, stylish, shapy calves, and he is throwing the colours. Okay, he carries the recessive red gene. He's white himself. Yes, with this red gene, you're going to get some blue and whites. You'll get all blacks. You could get a red, and you will get some of the real proper colours, depending on the colour of your cow and what genes she's carrying. But average calving difficulty, to say the least. The next bull is Leonard. He's a jet black bull, white belly, and breeding that kind of colour. I suppose for selling weanlings, that colour is very attractive. A bunch of black calves will get away better than just a single or whatever, but they're nearly all black calves. Where I see him working super is on red Limousin cows, Limmy Partenay cross cows, breeding super duper calves, middle of the road calving difficulty. So mature cows, I'd be saying, anyone that's at this blue job, you need a certain type of cow. Where I see those systems working the best is on nearly full bred Limousin cows, 3/4 bred heading on for pedigree red Limousin cows. You get more consistency in your crop of calves. The people that have stuck with these blues are getting very, very well paid for them. These good type blue calves now are no problem getting into €3.50 a kilo. So, but I think if we go back to where we were, going back using blues and cemental and black whited cows and Angus cows, you will slip down that slippery slope again and the blue will go off the face of the earth. I think you want to be used to blues to use them and to know what type of cow to use them on, but you need consistency in your cow. Okay, 2 more terminal Limousin bulls. Hatcliffe Newton is a bull that came out of Carlisle last October, 12 months. Calves are on the ground since the middle of the summer. People are very, very happy with them. Similar type calves to D'Artagnans. It's early stages yet and it's hard to say, but they seem to have that bit of bone and power and length and weight for age. They are very long. He's 5.9% calving difficulty in beef cows. He's €128 terminal index. I would hope his indexes will rise according to more information comes in on the bull. Currently, it's very hard to go to the UK and buy these different bloodlines because now it's getting a little easier because the BDGP isn't in force as hard. But these outcross bloodlines weren't coming in with maybe exceptional figures, and farmers were finding it very hard to use them when they were tied into the BDGP. The next bull is Madison. Serious, stylish, muscly bull. Calving is okay, 6.7% on beef cows. This bull is carrying 1 Q gene, okay? So he's 1 variant of the Q204X and he's 1 F94L. The last bull I went through was 2 copies of the F94L. The calves are very muscly, very stylish. Where I would see using this bull is on plainer cows. I think if you want to breed real shape in your weanlings, this boy will do it for you. The real cocky, stylish calves, great heads in them, good twisty ends in them, and they will be real sellers as weanlings. Replacements, I'm just going to dwell a little bit in this.
I just have to keep it moving on a little bit, John.
Okay, Alan. Castle Duke Casino, I suppose he's a bull I like a lot. He's breeding super females around the country. All I will say to you is on, when you're looking at a bull to breed daughters, look at the box with expected daughter performance on it. Look for reliability there. I think people went in blindly using high index bulls with very little reliability and have got their fingers burnt. What I would be saying in a small scale suckler herd in the west of Ireland, pick out your 5 best cows. The cows that win the best calf every year, they calve themselves, they have enough milk, and use a bull like Casino on them. Like, his daughters are serious calvers. 3.94% daughter calving difficulty means 4 out of every 100 have to be helped calving. He's a plus on milk, he's excellent on fertility, and what he's giving you is big, powerful, loose females that have calving ability. There's 2 daughters. The one on the left is an EBY bull calf. The one on the right is an Ivor bull calf. Lovely type of cow. Lovely, lovely type of cow. King, another bull. Why I like this bull is there's savage milk and fertility in the family. He's plus 5.5 kilos in daughter milk. His index rose €10 yesterday, going the right way. You can see what he's breeding. Festnose is a daughter-proven bull we brought in from France last year. First calves are on the ground. You can see the little bluey rony one of straightforward bluey roan cow. His converted figures are coming in at plus 6.6 kilos of daughter milk. Something different, something new, but he is proven. Gunshot, why I like this bull for replacement, he's €167 in replacement index, but some of these cementals that are that high in replacement lack on terminal, okay? He's 7 kilos of milk and he's still €114 in terminal. Very, very balanced cemental bull, very good in docility. He has quality with the index. Heifer bulls, I suppose, just on heifer bulls, What I like here is calving records, 2 copies of the 94L gene. And if in doubt, I suppose we're very lucky in Dovea. We have 2 and a 3rd Limousin bull coming, exceptional on beef heifers. If you haven't that available to you, maybe then you have to look at Solera or Red Angus. But the first bull is Ivor, Edenvale Ivor, 2 copies of the F94L gene, extremely easy calving. He's one of the easiest calving, well-proven Limousin bulls. I would say he is the easiest calving, well-proven Limousin bulls in Irish AI. 8,000 calving records, 5.8 in beef heifers. Okay, the daughters are making nice cows. He has massive indices on maternal, terminal, and he's 30 kilos of carcass. So like, he's the bull that ticks all the boxes. They're very handy calves born, and they do grow like mushrooms, okay? But 5.8% in beef heifers is very easy. I suppose EBY, do I even need to talk about him? He's definitely Ireland's most famous bull for easy calving. 6.9% calving difficulty in beef heifers. Would have been 3% in the old figures. When a bull gets that easy, he gets used more and more on heifers, and that's when his calving figure is going to creep up a little bit. There's 23,000 calving records in his proof, and I suppose he does breed roans, and roans is the fashion at the minute. Red Zeppelin is another option. I suppose, why would I pick him ahead of a Black Angus colour? You can see this yellow calf off a Charlie heifer, bluey grey one off of a Belgian Blue Cross heifer, 3.1% calving difficulty in beef heifers. So if you've something too muscly and you're afraid to go Limousin, this is a super option. He's good on carcass. They're actually making very nice cows, and he's savage easy calving. Okay. 4 bulls that are breeding roans, EBY and the Beaufox. There's a new bull, D'Artagnan Red. That's not a full pedigree blue. He's 90% blue, 10% Dutch red and white. And there's a new bull, Menos, the Burligent, that has the red factor as well. So look at, I've kind of flashed through everything. Alan said that the presentation will be up online. You can look at our website, and my email address is there if anyone wants to inquire any more about any of the bulls.
Okay, John, thanks a lot for that excellent presentation there. Again, plenty to put farmers thinking about there. So I'll get you, John, to stop sharing your screen there. Sorry, and I'll ask all the panelists there to maybe turn on their cameras again. And there's a good few questions in there. So look, I'm just going to hand straight over to Vivian there. If you're there, Vivian, just to handle the Q&A section there.
Yeah, I'm here, Alan. Yeah. Okay, we have a lot of questions, folks, so I'd ask the speakers to keep the answers as brief as they can. We're due to finish 9 o'clock. We may go a couple of minutes over. Just one comment, John, on Gunshot. You mentioned Gunshot. He's polled as well. He's carrying the single P, so it's another plus for him. Vivian, no bother, John. No bother. Yeah. Okay, I'll go straight into questions, lads. Okay, probably for maybe John or David, what calving difficulty percentage would you be aiming to use on a second calf cow?
Do you want me to take it, David?
Go ahead, John, yeah.
Yeah, I suppose on the second calvers are nearly more important than the first calvers, Vivian, because they're your probably bunch of animals on the farm that's under the most pressure. I'd be saying, if you were happy with an EBY calf off a springer, why not go back again the second time and get her calved and get her going right? The last thing you want is to have hardship on her and her after rearing the calf. I'd be saying Ivor EBY, you can step it up a bit. I'd be saying something kind of under 4% on beef cows, in or around. And if you've experience of the bull, or your technician has experience of the bull, is every bit as important as what's down on paper. I think reliability is the big thing there, Vivian, that you use bulls well proven, you know.
Absolutely. It's a comment, I suppose, more than a question, John, and it's something I would have heard before. The statistics for the bulls in the catalogue, it's just a comment from a viewer here that could you please make them a little bit more easier to understand for the farmers? They're probably printed for this year now, but maybe it's something to take back, and we can't keep things simple enough. That's just a general comment. Yeah. Next question. A cow, probably for you, John, again, a cow on standing heat. What time is the best for EI, and how long after seeing her standing?
I suppose AM, PM rule, and I suppose, David, you'll know more on the sex semen. They say probably 24 hours after you see her in standing heat for sex semen, you'll get the best results. But I think if you have a technician that's doing twice a day AI in your area, if you see a cow bulling this morning when you're going to work, there's no fear of her this evening when you come home. I would think later is better than earlier. I'd actually rather serve that cow tomorrow morning than this morning if she's only coming into standing heat. But this evening is the optimum time, 12 hours. They call it the AM/PM rule.
Okay, thanks for that, John. A question for you, David. Will holding the calves back in the creep areas to only 2 suckling periods a day shorten the postpartum period, and approximately by how long?
Yes, I suppose we've done a good bit of work, Vivian, on that. We'll say there, Michael Diskin specifically, and absolutely, where you can break that bond between the cow and the calf, or even dilute it. And we're talking about calves now that will be a month old, not young baby calves. We'll say there, within a week to 10 days, you'll see a significant number of the cows starting back into showing heat. So again, as I say, a calf about a month old, and try to break that bond, once, twice a day for a short period of time, 7 to 10 days, it will induce cows to start cycling.
Right,
and it'll shave about maybe three weeks to a month, we'll say, off in terms of the length of time it takes the cow to come back cycling again versus a cow that wasn't, restricted in that way.
And I suppose importantly, David, with the way I suppose the world has gone without any drug induction or any drug usage either. Yeah. That's perfect. Also, David, while you have the mic there, what can I do to help my cows get back cycling after calving, and especially, I suppose, the odd one that'll have a difficult calving, and any tips there?
Yeah, well, I suppose, as I was saying in the presentation, most of the effect is before the calf, in that, you have them in moderate to good condition. If they're thin at calving, feeding them more, we'll say, is not going to bring them forward, an awful lot, maybe a week on average. I suppose for very late calving cows, the synchronization type treatments, are I suppose maybe an extreme version, but they do work very, very well. But essentially, I think it's really, whatever about this year, planning going forward, make sure those cows are calved in moderate to good condition as opposed to thin, and that in itself, will bring them forward on average.
Okay, and just one final question for you, Dave, while you're there. Should heifers calving at 2 years old be treated different to older cows after they calve?
Yeah, I think obviously we'll say, as Tommy mentioned there, we'll say, and John also mentioned it, these are young animals, they're still growing, they're rearing a calf, they're after obviously gestating, we'll say, pregnant with a calf as well. They will take longer, I think I said it in my own presentation as well, maybe up to 3 weeks longer on average than a mature cow to come back on heat. So again, good nutrition, calf them down in moderate, not fat, but in around the condition score 3. And depending on silage quality, they may respond well, to a kilo or 2 of concentrate, for the first, until they turn out onto grass.
And I suppose probably the reduced suckling would have an extra benefit for those.
Absolutely.
A little bit of pressure, yeah.
Absolutely.
Or restricted access, I should say.
Right.
Tommy, just a question for Tommy there. Just pull it up here now. Tommy, I see from your presentation that you'd heifers achieving about 0.6 kilos a day over the first winter to meet the targets that we talk about for 2-year-old calving. This doesn't always happen at farm level, to be honest. And what are the reasons for this, and how do we address them?
I suppose, first of all, Vivian, we'll be targeting our heavier weanings at housing that would supposed to be coming from our heavier cows. And then at housing, then the advantages of weighing and seeing where they're actually at. And then I suppose the advantages of getting your silage tested to see what actually type of silage you have. Then from your silage analysis, going back to your silage analysis, drawing up a diet then to see actually what you need to supplement to get this, I suppose, 0.6, 0.7 of a kilo of average daily gain. Back to that then, I suppose the herd health management around housing, it's a stressful time of weaning and housing. So ensuring that there's no negative setbacks there. So have a herd health plan in place with your vet, and then at housing, ensure that all the basics, good ventilation in sheds, good water supply, and then stock are not overly tight in pens. And then if we get to spring, get them turned out as early as possible.
Turn out as early as you can, Tommy. Yeah, very good. Yeah. Final question, folks. It's almost 9 o'clock, and we've a couple of things to tidy up. I suppose before I ask the last question, just to say that we've got more questions in, and some of them we just hadn't time to ask. We'll get back to you in email the next couple of days. We have everyone's email address logged on, so we'll get back to you with answers there. The final question, lads, and it's probably a 6 marker. How to stop cows from breaking to AI or breaking to natural service? You'd always have a couple of repeat offenders on that. Any tips there?
I think the best tip for that one, Vivian, is maybe some proper nutrition and feeding. I think I see one herd, it's in Tipperary, but he does all winter AI, and he's 100% AI, 100 cow herd. He houses his cows the October bank holiday weekend every year. He has them on the same plane of nutrition. He starts AI 3 weeks later, and the man never has an issue. He has his cows on 2 kilos of meal all winter until they're scanding calf, and he's on off sucking. So the calves get in the morning, they suck, they're gone out grazing by day through the winter. And I think him, to me, in a spring calving system is different, but if you're an autumn AI, yeah, there is lots of prostaglandins there, David, to help, but I would be saying, to me, that is the perfect model, that he does house the same day every year, regardless of weather, grass. They go in the October bank holiday, he starts AI 3 weeks later, and everything is settled. He's his vaccinations done. He's on the same plane of nutrition. There's nothing changing.
Okay, John. So the motto of that story is, like ourselves, keep the belly full and we'll be happy.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks very much, guys. I'll hand back to Alan just to finish off tonight.
Okay, thanks, Vivian, for that. And as Vivian said there, any unanswered questions, we'll get back to you over the next day or so. So just before we depart, one final piece of information there, as it's mainly suckler farmers we have here viewing tonight. Just a quick reminder that the BEEP S scheme is now open for applications. It's, without getting into the detail, it's largely the same scheme as last year, involving the weigh-in measure, the option there to choose between either meal feeding or vaccination, and the option to do the fecal sampling the cows. The payment rates is the same as last year as well, but just one key reminder is that just because you were in the scheme last year does not mean that you're automatically in it this year. You must reapply again online on your ag food account, or get your advisor to apply on your behalf to be in the scheme for 2021. And the closing date there is Monday, the 26th of April. So look, we encourage as many farmers as possible there to join that scheme. And if you need any help there, contact any of our Teagasc offices here in Mayo. So look, at all that's left for me now to say is thanks on your behalf to our three presenters here tonight, Tommy, David and John, for their excellent presentations. And I hope, look, you got some useful information and maybe some ideas from their presentations. I also want to thank Vivian and to thank Brendan there, Gary, who has been in the background this evening, looking after the technical issues and who has driven this webinar series over the spring period. I want to thank you, the viewers, for staying with us during the night there, and a reminder that a recording of this webinar will be up on the Teagasc Mayo YouTube channel over the next few days. And also there, our series continues next Wednesday at the same time at 8 p.m. when we turn to the dairy side of the house, where Brendan Garry there will facilitate a special dairy webinar with our local dairy advisors, Alan O'Brien and Donald Kelly, and a speaker from Progressive Genetics. So with that, from me, Alan Nolan, and from all our presenters here tonight, it's good night and stay safe.
Good night, folks.
Thanks.
Thank you.